All right, welcome back. You're still watching a Business Watch powered by Nedbank Eswatini. This is the last segment of today's program. It's 9 minutes before 3 o'clock. We take a look at today's markets with Nedbank's Bongani. Very good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in, for coming through today. So, yes, let's take a look at markets today. Iran and Israel are still at it. Today's the sixth day. So, how is that affecting markets today?
Yeah, good afternoon, Lulu, and good afternoon to your viewers. It's a pleasure to be here. As you rightfully say, what's moving markets across the board is the conflict in the Middle East, which started last week Friday, and it's been going on now for quite a while without any signs of it abating in the near term. And that's causing a lot of concern, and you'll see amongst most market prices, from FX markets to commodities markets to equities, that story is the same throughout. So that's what tends to be moving markets. There are pockets of other information that are coming through. For instance, in South Africa, there was expectation of the inflation numbers which came out this morning, where the inflation in SA remained stable at 2.8%, which was unchanged month on month. We also had inflation in Eswatini. Those numbers came out earlier this week, which went down by 1 percentage point to 3.2% from 3.3% in the previous month. So we do see inflation continue to ease, but the conflict in the Middle East is putting a risk on that.
Yeah. Speaking of South African rand, let's take a look at today's numbers. In the markets today, what's happening?
Yeah, that's right. So you'll see from an FX perspective, you've been seeing the rand lose a bit of ground against the dollar and against most major currencies, being the euro and the pound. And again, as we say, this is because of what's happening in the Middle East. And what that is doing is that the market has put on a risk-off sentiment, if you term it that way, where it's a flight to safety, and the rand, being an emerging market currency, is seen as risky. So there's a flight to safer currencies, including the dollar and other developed market currencies. So you can see against the dollar, the rand is weaker by about 1/3%. Against the euro, it's weaker by about more than 2/3%, and against the pound, it's weaker by almost a full percentage point. And this is the same story. But what's very interesting here is that the strength of the dollar is not what it used to be. So in previous crises, if you'd call it that way, the strength of the dollar would be more pronounced. But I think the dollar has been weakened by first the Trump tariffs and that policy stance, and you've seen the world sort of start to move away from the dollar. But that's not to say the dollar is still not the dominant currency in the world. It's just that its strength is starting to wane, and you see that in markets, and you especially during this time around.
All right. So it seems oil prices seemed to have eased today, Wednesday afternoon, in the Asian trade. What is happening? Let's move on to commodities and take a look at today's figures.
Yeah, no, thanks, Lulu. And I think that's correct. As I said earlier, there has been a flight to safety since this crisis started, or the conflict in the Middle East started. Gold is down about 0.22%. But if you'd look at it in context, compared to the same time last week, the price of gold is up about 1.5 percentage points. So I think the easing in the price is an overnight occurrence, as markets are waiting to see what happens next, especially after President Trump cut short his G7 stay to go back to the White House. They're waiting to see if the U.S. is going to join the conflict on Israel's side. To fight against Iran. We'll see how that goes. But the story with oil is that oil is still up about almost 2 percentage points, but oil is up more than 10 percentage points since the start of the conflict. So that is very concerning, and that has
increased still if it goes on.
Potentially, yeah. And that has consequences for inflation, yeah. And as a result for interest rates globally.
Okay. Yeah. So lastly, let's take a look at equities today. What is happening?
No, thanks. As you see across equities markets, the story is the same. The Iran conflict is driving sentiment around. What you see is that the UK equities markets are relatively unchanged, but you saw the S&P 500 down almost a full percentage point yesterday, and this was as a result of traders adopting a risk-off sentiment because of risk that the US might join the conflict. Okay. And what that means from a growth perspective within the US. When you look closer to home in South Africa, the JSE All-Share Index is also down about 0.33%, and this is because you see investors again flight to safety, with SA being an emerging market economy. You see investors move money to where they deem to see safety. So that's basically it. In the next couple of days, hopefully we see more certainty, and hopefully we see we see an end to this conflict. But we'll be watching markets to see what happens.
Okay, just lastly, quickly, how are investors reacting to this? Energy investors, to be precise.
No, thanks. I think that's a very important question. So, for instance, from an equities perspective, you have seen equities down almost across the board. But the one sector that is an outlier there is the energy sector, where, for instance, in the US, the energy stocks were up yesterday about 5 percentage points, because obviously the potential disruption in supply chains in the Middle East means that you will likely see higher energy prices. So markets are starting to price that in. So that is the reaction. And I think you also see those who buy outright commodities, the price movements in the commodities prices, with gold being up about 1.5 percentage points and oil being up about more than 10 percentage points. Okay. That investors are pricing in the uncertainty.
All right. Thank you, Bongani, for that analysis today. Well, there you have it. Those are today's figures. This was the final segment of Nedbank Business Watch's market analysis by Bongani, who's the head of Treasury at Nedbank Eswatini. It's 2 minutes before 3 o'clock. We've come to the end of today's episode. Catch us again next week, Wednesday, for Nedbank Business Watch. Have a lovely day. We'll see you next week, Wednesday.
Make better money choices. Choose a bank that takes your money seriously. Business Watch was brought to you by Nedbank.